The importance of diversity in the workplace. This morning on For the Record. Good morning, I'm Neil Heinen. I'd like to think workforce diversity would be so easily recognized as a critical component of a good business that it requires no explanation. But it does. And to be fair, some companies would like to be more diverse, but just don't know how to do it. Others do not yet recognize that in 2012, a diverse workforce is required to attract the talent and energy to make businesses competitive in the global economy. Later this week, the Urban League of Dane County is hosting its second annual Workplace Diversity and Leadership Summit. Attendees and sponsors include dozens of the leading companies and organizations in this state, including two represented here this morning. I welcome to For the Record Urban League Vice President of Economic and Workforce Development, Mark Richardson, Spectrum Brands Vice President for Human Resources, Stacy New, and Madison Gas and Electric CEO, Gary Walter. And thank you all very much for joining me this morning.
Thank you.
Mark, I want to start with you just to explain what this summit is. What does it look like?
Sure. It's a full-day event. Last year was a half-day. This year's a full-day event. And really, it does three things. First thing is to gather business leaders, human resource leaders, community leaders, nonprofits together to talk about what a diverse workforce looks like, why we need it, and kind of how to get there. Thing two, it's to recognize companies that are doing a good job already. Small business, large business award will be given. For the large businesses, it's about recruitment, retention, advancement. For small businesses, it's about their staff and or volunteers reflecting the communities in which they do business. And third, it's about creating a shared experience for all those in attendance so that we all understand why it's important that, that workplace diversity be a priority.
People who watch this show know that, in no small part thanks to my wife, I define diversity pretty broadly. How broadly will the diversity discussion be here this week?
Quite broad. Quite broad. There's diversity you can see as far as perhaps the color of one's skin, ethnicity that plays a part, but there's also diversity that you may not see. Sexual orientation it plays into diversity. Handicapped, disabilities in the workplace, excuse me, plays into diversity. So it's about looking at things from a cultural competence standpoint versus a compliance standpoint. Are we doing what we should be doing because we have to check it off on a form, and if we don't, we're in trouble? Or are we looking for and are we attracting diverse employees because it's a competitive advantage for us, and it will help us stay competitive?
I need to ask this question just because I've actually done a couple of shows on it. Age would also be considered as a diversity.
Is part of it.
The older workers in this community who are looking for some help.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a
well, and you know, when you look at the workforce now, you've got 4 generations that are working at the same time. I think that's the first time we've had that. So you've got the 65-year-old next to the 25-year-old,
right?
And how they think about almost everything is different. Yep. Yeah. So that they help to sort of bridge a lot of things.
Who's coming to this? Who's it for?
I'd like to say everybody's coming to this. We do have quite sort of a broad attendance. We've got CEOs, we've got HR VPs, we've got trainers, we've got small businesses attending. And so it kind of runs the gamut. We've got a lot of nonprofits represented this year. We've got higher ed. We've got folks from the University of Wisconsin-Madison. We've got Madison College. Edgewood's playing a big role this year because they are, of course, turning out the workforce that we're talking about. And MMSD is represented as well. So
not only is this diversity writ large, it's workplace writ large too. I mean,
absolutely.
A lot of different.
Absolutely.
Stacy and Gary, both of your companies have a reputation for supporting diversity, and you're both supporters of the Diversity Roundtable, for example, and Spectrum Magazine, which Madison Magazine has helped with. But just from Spectrum's perspective, Stacy, why is this important? Maybe not just to you, but why would other people get some value from this?
Right. I think we have our world headquarters here. We have about 550 employees in the community, and partnering with a leader like the Urban League that is focused and committed to enhancing people's ability to achieve their career goals, which of course then in turn has an economic positive impact in the community. It's a smart business for us to be partnered, because we want to retain and retain and recruit folks into the community. Certainly a healthier community, a culturally engaged community, and frankly economically more strong community is very attractive for us.
Actually, I pay my bill by mailing it in, Gary, so I'm not at the office very much and don't really know, I don't have a sense of what it feels like at MG&E to have the kind of diverse workforce that you have. How would you describe how your employees feel about it?
Well, the employees are very supportive, and if you think about what we do as a utility, we interact with the whole community. So if somebody calls in with an emergency speaking in Spanish, we need to be able to address that. The Hmong community, for example, we need to have a cultural competence to interact with a whole spectrum in our community. You mentioned age and people of different ages, the way they tend to interact. I mean, we have students moving on campus who want to go online, fill out an application at 11 o'clock at night, get their information there. We have others, some of our older customers, they want to talk to somebody. So we need to think about our whole customer base, the diversity within the customer base, and be prepared to address their needs in ways that they're most comfortable with.
Yeah, I would imagine it's not possible for you to think about this topic without moving beyond MG&E and thinking about sort of the regional economic development work that's going on here. And I'm thinking of Thrive and Advance Now in particular, Gary. Yes. But just the idea that a diverse workforce well beyond MG&E is important to this effort.
Yeah, and with us, we need the diverse workforce to interact with the diverse customer base. And the demographics are changing dramatically in our community and in the region. So we're seeing more and more diversity in the region, and quite frankly, we need to think about economic development regionally in ways that kind of fit the demographics and make sure that we provide opportunities for the whole region and the very diverse population within the region.
I mean, does this fits into your thinking, I would assume as well, Mark, that the kind of talent that Thrive and Advance Now are specifically targeting to attract here?
Without question.
It values diversity.
And I believe that was one of the key strategies that came out of the Advance Now work, that we need to do a better job of identifying and harnessing that energy and the horsepower, if you will, from this new, it's not really new, but certainly in the last census, from census to census, the demographics have changed considerably. And so are we doing enough to reach communities of color? Are we doing enough to reach folks who speak different languages than English? And make sure we're engaging everyone in the economy. You know, the economy, we talk about the economy as a thing, as one thing, when in fact it's a lot of things, and it's a lot of people. And so a healthy economy is one that finds a way to engage as many people in it as possible.
All right, well, we're going to come back, talk a little bit more about tips and challenges to having a diverse workforce right after this. We are looking ahead to this week's 2012 Workplace Diversity and Leadership Summit, put in by the Urban League of Greater Madison. This is the second one. It's a day-long summit this year. It's Wednesday at Monona Terrace from 8 to 5, and you can still register to attend. Going to be a pretty good crowd from the size of it. What, you had about 275 last year and 400 this year?
Yeah, we're a little over 400.
Broken into sessions, Mark, is that how the day is going to be?
Yep, there'll be some general sessions, if you will, where we've got 4 featured speakers coming in to address folks from a general session standpoint, and then each one of those featured speakers will have a breakout, and then we'll have other subject matter breakout. So we'll have things from breaking through bias, where we'll actually go through some exercises. A couple of HR professionals from actually local hospitals, St. Mary's and UW Health, will be doing a breaking through bias section. There will be a section on the census and its implications for both from a hiring standpoint and from just a livability. What does it mean to the city, the county? There'll be a breakout session on networking. That's always a fun one to do. And so it kind of runs the gamut. We'll have someone from Dr. Rasmussen from Eau Claire will come down and give us a workshop on disabilities in the workplace. The Open Group will do a segment on the LGBT community. So we'll have breakouts all day long. It's going to be a full day. And this year we wanted to make it a little more interactive than it has been. The first year was more of a sort of an awareness. But this year it's going to be quite a bit more interactive. We're going to have a lot more sort of sessions, and people are going to be running around like Phil Donahue with microphones so that we can get some Q&A going.
I remember someone from S.C. Johnson, is that right, is a featured speaker from Racine.
Maria Campbell.
A company that has a good reputation for diversity.
They do, and she's coming back. She's coming back to do a session, and then to work with some CEOs here in town, because she was there when S.C. Johnson really didn't necessarily have a direction when it came to diversity. So she helped to build it from the ground up, and knows how to, and knows the pitfalls, can hopefully help some of our companies here in this region sort of flatten the learning curve, avoid some mistakes, and get some things going.
Stacy, just to fellow human resource people out there, in terms of nuts and bolts, what would you find helpful at a session like this that you think they'll find beneficial?
I think the most compelling arguments and or support are when you have the business case, you have the business reason. I think a lot of times, in the old thinking, diversity was marketed as almost a best practice, but in a best practice because it was the right thing to do, but perhaps it missed the actual economic and business value. And so I think when you really start to understand what's happening in the workforce and the changing demographics, all the things we've been talking about today, it's really not something that you can opt in. It's just smart business. And certainly as we started talking about the generational changes that are happening, we know that the millennial generation is going to be a large percent of our workforce in the fairly near future. And one thing that's very common is that they demand this concept of diversity and this mastering of understanding what that means.
Yeah, I'm trying to think through. For both of you, someone out there says, I want to go and I need some help with this, and raises their hand and says, I have an employee who comes in and says, I'm uncomfortable working next to this transgendered person or this this Asian person who's got an accent. I mean, is that the kind of advice that will be available to them? Are these the kinds of issues that this is designed to help with?
Yeah, the breakouts are really supposed to put some tools in one's toolbox, right? To address some of these very issues. And as long as you think you can plan for everything, there's going to be a scenario that you can't plan for. But as I was discussing with Marty Fox, who you know, Patrick Faribault, when we were talking about the open breakout, they said, I said, this is what we want to do. We want to have some interaction. We want to do some exercises. And he says, well, can you imagine if you're part of the LGBT community and you don't feel comfortable at work? Can you imagine, he said, if you flipped it and as a straight person, if you felt like you had to hide who you were at work? So that changes everything. That changes how deep the roots go in the community, right? And how close the relationships are with your coworkers. It changes what pictures you put on your desk. It essentially determines how plugged in you're going to be. And when he kind of put it in that context, I thought, well, you know what? I never really thought about it like that. That's just one example of some of the things we're gonna be putting forth, because if we want to be a modern city, if we want to be a modern region, and we want to attract the best and the brightest, we've got to get past the things that are keeping us from getting there, and this is certainly one of them.
Well, and I guess I'm making an assumption, Stacy, that those are issues that we're still dealing with in the workplace.
Yes, absolutely. It's human nature to have some resistance to something that appears different, or maybe something you're not familiar with. And I think that preparing people with the skills to just surface and communicating and articulating what you're feeling about whatever issue is, really the first step. And I think if you promote an environment whereby all folks know that they have that avenue, you've taken a huge first step.
I think we'll take the last break before we get the CEO perspective on this, and we'll come back right after this.
It's gonna be.
My guest this morning, Mark Richardson, Vice President for Economic and Workforce Development at the Urban League of Greater Madison. Stacy New, who is the Human Relations Director with Spectrum, and Gary Walter, who is the CEO of Madison Gas and Electric. And I wanted just to touch on the sort of the CEO perspective on this, Gary. I get the whole human resources thing, but how is it that we need to better connect CEOs to this concept of a diverse workforce as competitively important?
Yeah, it is competitively important, and I think they've structured the conference in the right way.
That it would appeal to CEOs, for example.
Well, it would appeal to CEOs, and for a couple reasons. One, they start with Terry Ludeman, former workforce development chief economist, talking about demographics.
Good stats guy.
And quite frankly, you need to understand the change in the demographics and have the facts and kind of that basis. And then what I liked about the program is the diversity of the discussion, in that we talk about racial and ethnic diversity, the diversity, the multi-generational diversity, disability, the people with different sexual orientations. So I mean, it covers a wide variety. And I know I think it's a very important thing to think about, not just in our business, but I make sure that I meet with every new employee when we have new employee interactions. And one of the messages I send is a message of respect, that we have a lot of different people in our community, we have a lot of different people in our organization, and we need to understand most people are just trying to get through the day. They're trying to do the best job they can and get through the day, and we have to interact with each other in a way that's respectful and understand those differences, and be supportive of others in the workplace and others that we interact with on a daily basis. And I think that is very important for those of us who think about customer service, who think about marketing and interacting, and think about our community in a broader sense. I think these are just critical messages.
And I mean, we've been focusing on the positives of this, and I think that's the way to do it. But the negative is if we don't do this, we're going to lose. I mean,
and if we don't, we're going to lose big. And I remember former Chancellor Wiley telling me once that there are companies who would not come and interview and looking for jobs, where they wouldn't come to the University of Wisconsin campus because there wasn't enough diversity. I mean, if you want to talk about losing, I mean, jobs out there and available, and there were some companies that didn't feel we were turning out a diverse enough workforce, that the things that they were looking for and that they needed. So we will lose if we don't fully take advantage of the diversity that we do have and develop it.
I think that's a great point. It's not so much people looking for even diversity in their workforce, but making sure that people are comfortable with diversity, that they've been exposed to diversity.
Yes.
Right. And because if you're not in that environment.
Well, if you think about it and you think, well, the millennials and the sort of young professionals, really the folks that are going to fuel the development, the economic development, the workforce development for the next 10, 20 years, if it's important to them, it better be important to us. And because if it's not, they can go anywhere. they can go anywhere they want. They can go to the Twin Cities. We're losing a lot of people to the Twin Cities.
Yeah.
You know, it's cold in the Twin Cities. You know, we should be able to keep folks here. You know, it doesn't seem like that far, but yeah, there's a big difference. But the Twin Cities market has done a great job in sort of its growth in the last 10 years, whereas our area has struggled. And one of the reasons is young professionals migrate. They flock to that area because they feel welcome.
Is it fair to say that this kind of takes the politics out of it?
I hope so.
You know, I mean, because it gets bogged down in politics a lot of times, whether it's immigration issues or affirmative action issues. But when you start framing it in terms of jobs and economic development and talent and entrepreneurship, feels like a different discussion, doesn't it?
Opportunity.
Absolutely, absolutely.
It's about opportunity, and we provide opportunity for things we value. We have to value everyone so that we don't have the unemployment rates we've got, so that everybody's part of this economy, and so that in turn, anybody who would come here briefly and say, do I want to be here? Do I want to move here? Do I want to start a family here? You know, we hope the answer is going to be yes.
Both of you have people, as I mentioned, committed to the Diversity Roundtable, which is something that we've done a couple of shows with members of the Diversity Roundtable, but I'm not sure people know exactly what that is. Why did Spectrum, for example, make the commitment to the Diversity Roundtable? Well,
very much committed to the Urban League and trying to contribute from a perspective of what they're doing in job readiness and career optimization resonates very well with us. It's just a natural partnership, and anything that we can do to contribute to that, we're certainly going to make a priority because, again, we're talking a lot about that today. That's the key theme. It benefits certainly us from a talent pipeline perspective and overall community health.
I don't think I've ever done a show without Annette Miller being on it from MG&E. I mean, so the viewers know well what the role that MG&E plays. It's Wednesday. Best thing to do, go to the Urban League website if you want to attend on Wednesday. We're going to come back and wrap up For the Record right after this. My thanks to my guests. The summit's Wednesday. You can register online, and we'll see you next Sunday on For the Record.